Hello Scouts, we're out with our Dutch oven again, and today we're going to be making an apple cake, and it is a very simple apple cake to make. It's inspired by my late grandmother who lived to 101 and was a source of all kinds of wisdom. She started off with this apple cake recipe that was made by scratch, where she put all the dry ingredients together before making the cake. We're going to improvise today while we're camping, and we're going to use a yellow boxed cake mix, and it's going to come out amazing. We're going to have some apples placed inside that are coated with cinnamon and sugar, and then we're going to sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon and sugar on the top of that as well. So I have my chimney started over here, so I get some coals going. Meanwhile, why don't we mix up this cake mix? Making the cake mix doesn't get any simpler than following the direction on the box, which requires a cup of water, a half a cup of vegetable oil, and 3 eggs. What I'm going to do is start with our wet ingredients, and I've got a whisk, and we'll start with our 3 eggs. With our 3 eggs added, I'll take and whisk and break up the eggs yolks and mix them in with the whites. Now I'll add my half a cup of oil, which I measured out before. Then I have a cup of water that I pre-measured out in my Nalgene water bottle. With my wet ingredients all mixed together, I'll open up my cake mix. One of the things I want to do is just check my cake mix and make sure that it doesn't have any clumps, and I just want to break those down so they'll incorporate into my cake easier. It's always best to use a knife when opening this. Don't attempt to try to open it by pulling it apart. It's guaranteed to lead to a pile of cake mix all over the place. With all my cake mix in with my wet ingredients, I'll whisk it together and try to mix it as evenly as I can. So I've got my cake mix nicely blended together. I'll leave my whisk in here for now. And we'll step this aside and we'll start getting ready with our apples. So before I get going peeling and slicing my apples, what I want to do first is take and prepare a Ziploc bag with some granulated sugar and some cinnamon. We're going to coat the apples in this mixture before we insert them into the cake batter. So I'm putting about 2 tablespoons of sugar, and I'll try to get about a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'll mix that together, see what it looks like. I'm going to add a little extra cinnamon here because I think I want a little light. Now I have my bag ready, and we'll get going peeling and coring our apples so that we can use them. I'm going to use some gloves here. I have washed my hands, but I understand when we're camping that can be a challenge. So as I handle the fruit here, I'll use some of these food service gloves to be able to prepare our apples. With my apples peeled, I will begin to slice them up to make some nice slices to go into our apple cake. You want to try to take the core out of the apple as you make your slices. I'm going to make my slices about 1/4 inch thick. Now with my apples all peeled and cored, I'm going to take and seal up the Ziploc bag and just move that sugar and cinnamon so that it coats the outside of all those apples. And now our apples are ready to go into our cake. So before I get going preheating the Dutch oven, I want to show you a trick so that if you want to get your cake out of the Dutch oven, it'll come out hopefully easier than if you just baked it directly in the bottom of the Dutch oven. The cake that I'm making isn't going to be used immediately after I finish cooking it. Certainly if you're out around the campfire, you can just serve it directly from the Dutch oven to your group. But I'll show you a little trick that uses parchment paper. And I'm going to take a piece of parchment paper that is about the length that is about the diameter of my Dutch oven. And I'm going to fold it in half. Then I'm going to fold it in half again. And I'm going to then fold it into triangles and make like a cone. So I have my first triangle. I'm going to fold that in half and make another triangle. Then if I can, maybe another one. I'm going to come over to my Dutch oven, which is cool, and I'm going to eye it from the center of the Dutch oven versus the bottom of the, and I just cut off the remainder. And now I'm going to just eye it, see if it fits. I think I need to take a little bit more off. Not the end of the world, it can come up the sides a little bit. So now I have a round disc of parchment paper that I can put in the bottom of my Dutch oven. And what I'll do is I'm going to give a little spray on the bottom, and I'll apply my parchment paper, which fits nicely in the bottom there. And then I'll hit that when I get ready to go with a little more spray to be able to ensure that it'll also peel off the back of the cake, which I'm sure it will regardless. So we've got that in there. I'm going to get some heat on the top of this Dutch oven and a little underneath, and we'll be ready in no time to be able to put in our cake into the Dutch oven. So for today, I'll be using the ring method, where I'm going to put a ring of charcoal around the rim and a ring just inside the underneath of the bottom. And this will give me some nice even heat. So now that I have one complete ring on my top, I'll take and move my Dutch oven, and I'll put a ring underneath the bottom. So with my ring underneath the bottom, I'll put my Dutch oven back on. And we'll let this preheat for about 10 minutes. Well, Scouts, our Dutch oven has been preheating for about 10 minutes. While I'm remembering it, I'm just going to take and spin it a little bit to even out that heat a little bit. I'm going to take my lid, put it over here on my lid stand or trivet. Before I get going, I'm going to add that spray on the inside. And I'm looking to get the sides as well as the bottom. Put on some food service gloves here. Now I'll take and just pour our batter right in the center of the Dutch oven. Done my best to keep the Dutch oven level so that the batter goes in and lays evenly. If my batter didn't go in evenly, I could use my rubber spatula to move it around. So with my batter in, now it's an opportunity to lay out these apples in a nice pattern. Now that I know I made it with my pattern completely around the inside and the perimeter, I'm going around with the extras and sticking them where I can find a location that they'll fit. So now with my apples all nicely arranged, and I'm sure they would taste delicious even if they weren't nicely arranged, but we're going to take and we're going to sprinkle some cinnamon sugar right over the top of our cake. You could have done this in a Ziploc bag and mixed it up ahead of time to be able to use. Now I'll take my Dutch oven lid and place it right back on top of the Dutch oven, give it a little turn, make sure it's seated well. And every 10 minutes or so in the beginning here, I'm going to take and I'm going to lift the Dutch oven up. I'm going to give it about a third of a spin that direction. And then I'll come by pressing down on the lid, give it about a third of a turn the other direction to make sure my heat is even. And what I'll do is I have my chimney, I'll add a couple extra charcoal briquettes on that using my charcoal container here, and just to make sure I have enough heat to be able to get all the way through this baking. So Scouts, it's been about 40 minutes or so. I've been replenishing the heat as I need to, and the thing I like about the ring method is I can look at it by volume and add additional coals, nest them in between some of the coals that are starting to burn out. I was more attentive to the top and adding coals and backed off a little on the bottom because I found that that helps prevent the bottom from burning, especially with that cake batter right in direct contact with the bottom of the oven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off the lid, we'll test it, make sure it's done, and then we'll see if we can get this out of there. So one of the telltale signs is, and I'll try to angle this, is if the cake separates from the side of the pot, which this is doing. And I'm taking a paring knife, I'm putting it in to the batter, and it's coming out clean. So I know that it's done. So our cake is completely finished. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of some of my coals here in my fire pit over on the side. So I've got my cake still in there. I've removed the ash and coals from my lid so that it's free. And now what I'm going to do is, without burning myself on those coals, take my Dutch oven, flip it, and look at that. My cake had pulled away from the edges, so I knew I would be okay pulling it off of the heat. So now that I have my cake separated, I'm going to take and remove that. Look at that bottom. We'll try to get this in for a close-up. That bottom is nicely baked. Now what we'll do is we'll take and put this pan and look at that. So our cake came out perfectly. It's an apple cake. Trust me, those apples are still in there. They're going to taste delicious. And this is going to be great. I could serve it right off the plate or serve it out of the Dutch oven, and this is going to be delicious. So here's looking back on my grandmother Thomas and her apple cake inspired recipe that we're using today in our camp Dutch oven. Get out there, have some fun with your patrol and your troop. Try some different cooking methods and different recipes and really enjoy yourself in the outdoors.